everyone, I'm Jocelyn, and I am grateful you're here. You're listening to the Starting with Gratitude podcast. This is a safe space intended to host meaningful conversations exploring all topics of the human experience. Every conversation starts with gratitude and remains rooted in gratitude. After you listen, make sure to join the community by subscribing and sharing. I am so happy you have joined us. Hello, Sebastian.
Hello, Jocelyn.
How is your spirit currently?
My spirit is great right now. It's actually might be like the best it's been in a very long time.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so this is like great time.
Awesome. What is contributing to you feeling great?
I think it's just like a combination of like so many things aligning at the same time, and it's like kind of like reaping the benefits from like a very long time of dedicating to just trying to figure it all out. I'm sure we'll get into more specifically, but yeah, like career and life wise, everything is just flowing really well right now. It just it's really high.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, when you, especially as like a self-employed person or like a freelancer, when you feel like you're in that state of flow and like opportunities and everything just seems to be falling into place, you can just relax into your work and just like make magic happen.
Yeah.
So I love that. I'm glad that you're in that space. And yeah, we're going to get into all of it. And before we do, I'm going to ask you to share with us what it is that you feel grateful for.
Yeah, this is like the first homework assignment I've done in such a long time. Because I wasn't big on even doing them in school. The first thing I wrote was that I'm grateful for things that I once took for granted. And I think that all comes with just coming off the year of like lockdown and COVID and whatnot. That whole year was a lot of like reflecting on things that I was taking for granted. Everything from just like my health in general, my family, which before COVID, the years before, I didn't really spend that much time with them because I was always quote unquote too busy with work. And I mean, I was like a traveling photographer most of the past couple years in the music space. So I was just away a lot. And last year I got to really like just spend such a good amount of time with my parents and my brother and whatnot. And it made me realize how many years I just wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
And I was taking like the culture and music world for granted, essentially, because I remember like being at festivals and shows and just kind of being jaded to it. And like in hindsight, which everything's always clear, I just like really realized I took it all for granted. So looking back on it all, just very grateful for it all, and even very grateful for the last year that put everything in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that led, I guess, to like my next. I'm grateful for the past and how it created my present, because I think all the good and bad still led to this like almost what I feel like is like a perfect place right now. So I feel very grateful for all of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very grateful for the overwhelming amount of people that support me, especially in the last couple of weeks. It's just become a very like apparent and very like present of how many people just have like a very high amount of like support and respect for me. And it just feels, I don't know, it feels crazy, honestly.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel very grateful for it all.
Yeah.
And most notably, like my best friend, Mike Cozio, who he's a DP in Los Angeles, especially like lately, he's just been always such a big motivator in my life. And like every time things get to a point where I feel like maybe I should stop all this and like try to like go into the quote unquote normal life and all that, he's been like the push to get me through that. And every time it leads to like this greater part of my life. And right now I'm like entering, I guess, that greater part. Yeah. And I feel like very indebted to him and always keeping me in check with stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm feeling really grateful for the future because I'm looking forward to it a lot right now. So that's just a great feeling. Yeah. And I'm just grateful for every day I get a chance at this whole life thing, because it's pretty sick.
Yeah, I love all of that. And I thank you for being open to partaking in writing down your gratitude. I feel like we can all relate to how last year really did put things into perspective for us. You brought up how you feel like you took certain things for granted. Aside from, like spending time with family and your career, were there any other things that like really stuck out to you that you feel like you weren't really valuing as much?
I definitely like just like wasn't taking care of myself in general. I was
Mhm.
more existing and reacting to everything as opposed to just like being more considerate with my actions and just like everything from how I treat myself to being more present in social situations and things like that. So I
Mhm.
think on top of everything, or I think that complemented how I felt about everything else.
Yeah, yeah. Before we dive into like even more of the deeper stuff, I want people who are listening to kind of really get to know like who you are and what it is that you do. You live in North Carolina.
I live in New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey.
Yeah,
Okay, so what's in North Carolina?
my girlfriend.
Oh, okay, okay. So I don't know how New Jersey is. Was it like, I guess you're close to New York,
Yeah.
but I wanted to ask you, not being in a city like New York specifically, or not being in LA, where when you don't live in those cities, it kind of seems like all the opportunity is there and it's, less accessible to kind of do your thing in the creative world. How did you really make a name for yourself and like land the clients that you have now?
So I'm like a big believer in like the fact that like the corny old saying, like if you love something, you just figure out a way. And that's I guess the relationship I've had with music and with like streetwear and the fashion world.
Mm,
And yeah, I never let the fact that I lived in a small town in New Jersey limit the fact that I could participate in these circles and in these subcultures because I had like a inclination and actual like love for it.
mm,
So I kind of just like I never even looked at it as a barrier. And I think starting there is just I don't know, it's just like not it's like a non-existent problem.
yeah.
So it all seemed very simple to me. It was like while I was in college, I took a internship at a clothing brand and just working in their warehouse. But I started becoming good friends with them. A lot of them started seeing what I was doing. I started doing photo work for them. So that relationship built. Some of the people there were into the same music I was, so I would go to underground rap shows with them like after work, and sometimes I'd bring my camera, and then it's just all domino affected from just wanting to be involved in the culture to, as you know, the domino effect of just being in those environments and just actually like I wasn't there because I was trying to be a big time photographer, or I wasn't trying to tour, or I wasn't trying to like create a life out of it. I was more or less trying to bring that environment into my life. That's
Hmm.
pretty much it. That
Yeah.
was just like the circles I wanted to exist in.
Yeah.
Um, because I didn't have that sense of community or that sense of just people I wanted to be around in my local community. Nothing against them. It just like I couldn't find people that were into the same stuff with me. And I was like, great, I'm not gonna like be upset about it. I'm just gonna find my circle elsewhere. And that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think other than you not seeing your environment as a barrier, which I think really is a huge thing? Like when you don't limit yourself in general, that already eases up your ability to achieve whatever it is that you want.
Yeah.
But aside from that, and aside from just sincerely being passionate about what it is that you're pursuing, what do you feel has contributed to the success that you're experiencing now?
I think also just taking in consideration that like, because there's a big emphasis on like it's not what you know, it's who you know, but you also have to have something to offer. So like taking in consideration having a craft or having a skill set that is like desirable in a sense. It's like the I guess the way that it worked out for me to be able to elevate in those environments, because you kind of like can't like ask your way through it. You have to offer something that's like desirable to keep you in those industries and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything in life. It's like a fine balance of, you know, go after something that you really enjoy, learn a craft that keeps you in there, and ultimately the love for it is going to keep you in that environment. Like I always tell people, like, because there was like a boom on Instagram of like people always, like a lot of people wanted to be music photographers, and I get it because it's very exciting to see. But like, I don't know, like if you're into trees, you know, go all into nature. You know, like you have to make sure you're 100% passionate about what you're dedicating yourself to, because there's a lot of ups and there's a lot of downs. And I'll be the first to admit, like I've gone flat broke over trying to chase my dreams several times in my adult life. You know, like there's several times where I've been like, okay, this is just not going to work. Like
Yeah.
I've reached very high levels, but like it's just not continuing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's, you have to be really, really passionate about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was the thing that made you desirable or you unique?
I don't want to like sound like I'm bragging or
Oh,
something,
no,
but I think
no.
like I do think that having a really good skill set in photo really helped me a lot. There was a lot of artists that just enjoyed, you know, the photos that I would take of them and how they looked in those images. And I took that in consideration a lot when photographing artists, because they were like a lot of my favorite artists at the time. So I wanted to present them in a good light. Like I still want to like get a shot of them and just post them looking all crazy, you know?
Mhm.
So there was a big emphasis on using my skill set to present them in the best light I could. And I think that is what created that domino of people wanting my work in that environment.
Yeah. What makes you unique to me or to perhaps like others who also just kind of see you from like the outside looking in is that you are not only in like the music industry or like concert photography, but you also are involved in like cars.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I want to touch on that because it seems like it's a big part of your life. And I'm curious about it. Like, where did that passion come from? How did that kind of become such an important part of your life?
That's like the child in me staying alive type thing. I mean, it's something I was inclined to since I was as far as I can remember. I just had an infatuation with cars, and I never let that go. I just never did. I kind of just brought it with me and into every part of my life, and used where I'm at in life as a facilitator to keep it going. And even when it started with photography, it started with shooting cars and my friends' cars, and that allowed me to really grow that skill set because I was photographing in different lighting situations, different colored vehicles, different environments, different motions, and all that. And it just made me very familiar with how a camera works and how you can use it to your advantage to photograph something. I mean, I had a very cheap like crop sensor DSLR for the first couple of years of my career, and
Mhm.
I was able to photograph at like a level that you think I would have like better gear. But it was because like shooting vehicles made me so familiar with how a manual camera works.
Yeah.
And yeah, just cars have always been a part of my life. It's even something that I just like don't think about because it's like so it's been a part of my life since I can remember. Video games are all car games. You know, taking the school bus to school every morning was just looking at every car that passed by. In my
Yeah.
neighborhood, there was like people that would tune their there was like a tuner in my neighborhood that a lot of people in my town with modified cars would go to, and he would like tune the computers on their car. So I would just like watch them just for hours. I don't
Yeah.
know. I was just always so inclined to. It just seemed so cool to me. It just seemed like the coolest thing ever. So, and that to this day, it's just I still have. I always at least have one modified car, and right now I'm big into drifting. So I have a drift car,
Yeah.
and it's just so fun. It's
Yeah.
honestly like I've done so much. Like thankfully, I've done so much great, cool stuff in my life. Nothing beats the feeling and like how much I love drifting.
So you yourself actually drift, like you yourself are in these cars, also not just shooting them, but you're also like actually driving these cars.
Yeah, yeah, on the track. Yeah, I have like I'm in a drift team. We actually just like had a competition in Connecticut a couple weeks ago, and we got third place there, which means that now we get to go to Wisconsin in 3 weeks and compete there against all the top teams of the country. So
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be really interesting. But yeah, it's just like,
Oh,
it's so cool.
that's so tight.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so like curious about that world now. Like I didn't know that you were that into it, that you were also doing like competitions and stuff.
It's all at a grassroots level, though. It's like we're not
Yeah.
doing it for money or anything. It's just like
Yeah.
we just really love it.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I mean, I've personally like always loved cars too, but I haven't actually invested in that passion and curiosity. Like I'll just go to car shows,
Hmm.
but I don't really know like what that world is like when you're in it that deep, or like how it impacts you as a person. Do you feel like racing or like just being in that community has influenced you as like who you are, or how has that experience like personally been?
I think, yeah, I think from very early on, it taught me the importance of sense of community. And I think that's like an important value that I've carried with me into everything that I do, even like in the music photography world, because at this point I'm like putting teams together to shoot things and whatnot. And the actual like the team dynamic and like the community is so important to me. And I think being into cars from so early on, and as soon as I was old enough to go to car meets and start building my own car and like have just random people helping me out and things like that, and I got to really understand what community move, like trying to move together or trying to move up together is like. I think that got instilled in me just naturally from being in that environment. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it really impacted me more than I think I'm just realizing it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. How does what would be like the proper term, like car community, or like how would you say it?
I like I use like two oddly specific words, but like what I used to refer to it would be like, because there's like different, I guess, niches as with every industry.
Yeah.
Um, so I like to refer as like youth automotive culture because it
Okay.
like is relative to, I guess, like millennial and zillennial culture and how it interacts with cars, because it is a lot different throughout generations,
Yeah.
especially as
So
these are weird.
yeah. Yeah. So how does the youth automobile
Automotive.
community? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
automotive. Automotive. Okay. How does the youth automotive community or culture differ from the music or like concert photography culture community? Like, what are the similarities and differences between the two?
I guess the same similarities are a lot of what I see in the difference. Like youth automotive culture, I meet a lot of people that they base their whole life around cars and down to like their business, whether it's owning their own shop or they're photographers in the automotive space. It's almost like a 50-50 because I meet a lot of people that are self-employed and freelance and whatnot in the automotive world. And I meet a lot of people that have like a 9 to 5 completely separate from uh, their passion. And
Hmm.
same thing I see in the music world. There's like a lot of music photographers that's their bread and butter. There's a lot of music photographers that they are like a video game designer, and just on the weekends when they can do festivals, they do it. And you would think that they only shoot music,
Yeah.
but they actually have a 9 to 5.
Okay.
So I see a lot of that in both communities. I think it's a privilege that when your passion can transcend into just being the entirety of your life. But there's some people that prefer keeping their passion separate and I guess more special.
Hmm.
And I think there's something to learn from both sides. And I always consider like, I mean, the grass is always greener type of a thought. And I always consider both sides because I have thought of it a lot in my career of like, would it be better to just leave this on the side and have something more sustainable be my bread and butter? But time and time again, I don't know. I always base my life around my interest. That's just how it's been forever. I kind of
Yeah.
I don't want to let that go.
Yeah, yeah. So as we're like on the topic of this, people either deciding to like fully commit to having their passions being their like full time or just like leaving it on the side as a hobby. But when you do decide to have your passions as your job, as your career, and you also experience like the adversities that come with it, how has that experience been for you in not allowing the obstacles or challenges to lessen your passion or joy for what it is that you do?
It's tough. It's really tough because there are times where you like almost like get mad at yourself or mad at your passions because of, where it's brought you in, or taken you in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it just takes a lot of putting everything in perspective and, realizing the life that it's granted me, the experiences that it's granted me that I just simply would not have experienced otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I've been very, very grateful that this has granted me so many life experiences that allow me to just be like, put myself in check more or less and not let uh like a bad situation or like I guess the biggest one, that the biggest hurdle is like the negative financial situations when they arrive. It just makes
Mm-hmm.
you like reconsider everything.
Yeah.
Um because I mean, especially once you're like deep in adulthood, once you don't have health insurance and you're just like, everything that's a part of your life is your financial responsibility. It could either put you down or it could fuel the fire. And I think it's just like putting everything in perspective and using it as fuel is the most important part.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you've gotten to the lows of like really committing to this career. Do you feel open in sharing like a testimony of yours where it just really is an example of like, do not give up? Is there an experience where you look back and you're like, man, it was in that moment where I was about to just give up on this and I'm so glad that I didn't?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm almost going through that right now. I mean, surviving last year was very difficult for any freelancer.
Yeah.
We can all attest to it. All the bills got really tight. Um, when you're freelance, unemployment only does so much because it was few and far between being able to like have proof of income and all that stuff. So I think, yeah, right now is a big like got through such a low of the low situation that, and like now everything is like coming to fruition of like I'm finally going back to shooting music this weekend, which I'm pretty excited about in
Mhm.
Chicago. Work has just been out of nowhere skyrocketed. I just launched my brand last week or the week before and like had like a 20-minute sold out collection, which I was not remotely expecting. But it was like, yeah, that really down period, I dug my face into my laptop and was like, I'm gonna make this all work out, and just like really went to work on a bunch of different things and setting myself up for a bunch of different things to work out. A lot of my work nowadays is I do picture vehicle coordination for a lot of sets that I work on, and I just started create like last year, or yeah, during COVID I started creating this spreadsheet of just all my connections in the automotive world
Hmm.
and then all my connections in the film world. And now I work with both seamlessly of connecting productions and vehicles. And I don't know. I just used like that really down period to really dedicate myself to like reinventing myself, making new things, making things that didn't exist before, and it's paid off like tenfold.
Yeah, that's really clever that you connected the two in that way.
Yeah, I was loosely doing it for a couple years, just like helping friends out here and there. But there was actually like I guess there was a point where I was like, if I take this really seriously, I could probably create something from it. And I just did it because it was also like the sense of like having nothing to lose, because
Yeah.
like there's
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there was that, and it was like designing stuff for my brand, and I just dedicated so much time to just like things that I can come up with, and it's all paid off, and it's continuing at this point.
Yeah.
Feels great.
What do you feel like you're currently overcoming personally?
Self-doubt. Yeah, overcoming that's huge. Especially like, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 28, so like 30s like right on the horizon, and dedicating my whole adult life to just making a career of myself. And the last year, everything fell apart. It just put me in this bad hole of self-doubt, and like going back to what I was saying, like if it was all worth it, and if the trade-off of experiences for something that can just be slipped under like a rug was worth it. But yeah, just getting over that doubt feels incredible.
Yeah.
I don't blame myself for getting into that mode of self-doubt, because like, I mean, the situation called for it.
Yeah, it was very valid.
Yeah, because
And
it was scary. It went from like last year, I had like 52 weeks all planned out, booked out. And once lockdown happened, the emails and phone calls started rolling in, and my year went to nothing. It was all erased from my calendar. And it felt terrifying, like going into like, a year where you're just like, gonna kill it this year, been working so hard for this, blah, 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 all that. And then it just gets slipped under the rug. It's just like, shit, what have I been doing this whole time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I know people that were furloughed from their job, but they got like a whole year's salary, and they still got their benefits and all that stuff. And I'm just like, dang, I don't have none of that, and I don't have none of the work coming in. So yeah, it was a really low because it not only put like this financial strain, but it also put this like doubt of like what I dedicated myself to, or what like I was so wholeheartedly into for my whole adult life.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to everything that you just said. And I'm sure a bunch of people can, with what we went through in 2020, because it's like it wasn't a unique experience, it was a collective experience. And I'm 27, so I know what you mean by like approaching your 30s and what that feeling is like. And last year was like the same thing for me. Like in the beginning of 2020, like I had everything booked up until summer of 2021. Wow. And same thing happened. Like everything just started, the email started coming in of like not having work and clients. And at the time I was in a really serious, like committed partnership. And I was also like thinking about, okay, I'm approaching my 30s, like thinking about like like my future family, and just all of that stuff that you naturally start thinking about when you're in a relationship, when you're getting older. And it was the same when I lost everything. I was like, man, am I being irresponsible? Like not having chosen something more stable or more secure, and just kind of realizing like, wow, like, having worked in primarily festival, like in the festival world, I would have never thought that that could just disappear. Granted, it's not common for a pandemic to happen. Like we've never experienced that before, but it was still like a really eye-opening experience of like, damn,
Absolutely. Yeah. It was, especially being in that festival to festival environment. It's just like I don't know. It was almost like we felt like we had a blanket of security of like, the next festival will come. And then like, as soon as that's gone, you're just like, whoa, I didn't know that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that we persevered and that, you stayed committed and stayed in it. And it is in those low lows where you have nothing to lose, where you get really creative. It's almost like becoming a beginner again.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like you have that drive of like, all right, I need to figure this out. Got to try something new. Let's do this. What do you feel like, now looking back at that experience, what do you feel were some lessons that you learned?
I wouldn't say not self-doubting, because I think like having that feeling of self-doubt and then getting myself through it was very beneficial. So I don't even regret feeling the self-doubt. It did reinforce the importance of community, because while everyone was very isolated, I've been in a group chat for the past couple of years of being in the industry of like 30 of my colleagues, and we're all just very close, and we all just talk every day. It started as just a group chat to send memes in, but it just became like a support, like a literal like mental support group. And it's been phenomenal. And especially during isolation, just having those people to always communicate with, whether it's just like a pointless joke or like a serious topic, like always having a group of people that I knew, and it's like a no judgment zone. Everyone talks about everything. And I think having that zone and that comfort with several people really, really helped. Like I look back at it all and I'm like, if I didn't have that, I don't know how it would have gone. Because I feel like whether it's comic relief or serious conversations, you always need that community that you can rely on, and that those people that you can speak to with no judgment. I think that's so important, because I think there's a lot of benefits to isolation. I mean, I live alone and I love it, but there is a downside. It's like a double-edged sword, and complete isolation with like a combination of negative things going on in your life could be very detrimental to your mental health and just life in general.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of transitioning a bit out of the career space. Now that I know, if you're open to talking about this, now that I know that you're essentially like in a long distance relationship, right?
Yes.
How was that experience during quarantine? Because I feel like relationships, whether it was with your partnership, with yourself, with your family, like all of those shifted because of 2020. How did that impact your relationship?
I feel like it kind of accelerated things, because it went from a very new relationship to a very matured relationship in a matter of a couple months because of quarantine and COVID. We were fortunate that when lockdown happened, I was in North Carolina and we were locked down for like that whole period together. So I think if we were isolated for that whole time, who knows how that would have gone, because that would have been just a very prolonged period of time. And it was a fresh relationship at the time. So I think that really allowed it to mature. It allowed for us to go. She also is a photographer and she works freelance. So, we were kind of going through it together, and it built a lot of perspective on each other and just how we go about things. So I look back at it really thankful for that period, because it does shift the dynamic between two people, but you learn so much about another person through a trying period like that. So I think that in that aspect, I think it was really positive. It breeds the same issues, I guess, that like, I don't know, just not having anything to do every day would breed. Get bored.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's just like at some point you like wake up and you're like, I got to do something different today. Because the beginning of COVID or quarantine did feel like a extended snow day. And then once that started wearing off, you're both like, what are we doing now? So that was definitely it was really tricky. No one's ever prepared for a type of dynamic like that. So everyone's kind of like learning about it as we go through it. And then you only kind of like really learn what happened in hindsight. Because every day is just kind of like starts turning into a blur. Every day is like Groundhog Day for quite some time.
Yeah. And I do feel like even now, I think it's still becoming transparent because there's still a lot going on in the world, but just seeing feel like this year and last year has really shown like how people handle conflict, how people like navigate hardships and loss and just kind of like move through the world in general. I feel like it's become even more transparent, with the people around us and in intimate relationships, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. 'Cause I feel like there's a lot of people that were very, I don't, I can't blame them, but they were just. I saw a lot of people publicly just like blaming the situation for where they were at in life and the cause and effect. And I get that, but it is like we all collectively went through it. It's like you kind of have to roll with the punches at that point, and that's the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
Because it was like, well, what are you gonna do? You can't we couldn't singly change how things were gonna go. So you kind
Yeah.
of like you know, new cards were dealt, and it's either play the hand but don't get mad at the hand because we
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, for sure. And now that you've, transitioned out of quarantine and you're back in New Jersey, how has the long distance relationship dynamic been? Have you experienced long distance before?
I've experienced like somewhat, but not this type of distance. My previous relationship before this one was we were only like an hour away from each other, so
Okay.
it wasn't that difficult. However, I was very busy career wise,
Yeah.
so that felt like a long distance relationship because I was always somewhere else. So I get the similar dynamic in this relationship, and but like she works freelance and she's sometimes way busier than I am, honestly, especially the last couple of weeks. So it kind of allows for this separation of both of us being able to go really hard at what we do because as you know, as a freelancer, it just at sometimes it turns into a very 24/7 and sometimes you have a good amount of buffer time to just hang out and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the separation allows for us to just dive into what we're working on for prolonged periods of time and then just come together when we have the available time. And there's like a blanket level of respect and understanding because we both uh, function like that.
Yeah.
So it does get difficult. I mean, I'm not going to lie at all. Because there's the times where I have that buffer and she doesn't, and vice versa. So it's about just being understanding because we both live like work and live the same type of lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Given that this relationship was fairly new before quarantine and then, quarantine happened and it really put things to the test, really. It was either going to work out or it wasn't,
Yeah.
how did, given that it like worked out and both of you have been like, you know, working this out still, what have you learned about yourself, like as a partner, as a man in this relationship?
Um, I've definitely learned a lot of, I guess, participating more in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I guess I overlooked for quite some time, especially when I was in another relationship in a very busy point in my career. I kind of was like a partner when I could be a partner, but other than that, I was just like doing my own thing, and that I guess wasn't a way to treat a relationship. And if anything, this relationship has made me, and especially like having that time together, it's allowed me the time to more proactively be a partner and what that entails. Because I guess it made me realize that I just didn't know what being a partner was for quite some time until recently.
Yeah.
It definitely just allowed me to go through the motions of like what being there for someone is and having the time to dedicate to someone, giving undivided attention, um, everything that entails of you know coming together with one person with the main goal of both of us helping each other get forward and together and whatnot. So
Yeah.
it felt really positive, which I love.
Mm. Yeah. That's awesome. And on the topic of family, like how has your family dynamic shifted over the course of the past seasons of our lives? Like I know you mentioned that, you you were able to spend more time with family last year.
Yeah, it's shifted dynamically. Like my relationship with my parents has always been great. They've always been very supportive, even when they don't understand certain things. As you know, coming from like an Hispanic family,
Yeah.
like they always want what's best for you, and sometimes they don't think that what you're up to is what's best for you because it
Yeah.
like scares them. But even through all those like trying periods, they've been very supportive, and I've been able to like transition into more of a like a very transparent friendship. It's been so nice this past year of just like having days where I could just go down to their house and just spend the day with them, or I'll just be on the phone for hours with them. It's just I don't know, having this like level of just friendship with them has been so sweet, honestly, and it's just like it's also made me feel like dang, I've been missing out, like because because I let life get a little too busy and totally disregarded just making time for certain things. There was a lot of like I missed my niece being born because I was like away on a job, and like I missed like so many of my parents' birthdays and things like that. And it just I don't know. I think you have to pick and choose your battles, and you have to obviously be passionate about what you're about, but also keep in mind and keep in check the things that are important to you. And I think I just forgot how important my family was to me, and I think I also just felt like I would have time at another period for it, but the reality, as grim as it is, you just never know how much time you have.
Yeah.
So I took a lot of that into consideration, and right now it's a great relationship. I'm going back to Colombia with my parents in like 2 weeks for a couple of
Hmm.
days. They're going for like 2 weeks, but I have like 5 days off, and I'm gonna spend it down there with them. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like over the course of the past year, you've evolved into like a new version of you?
That's what it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's been so trying, and it's been like so good, so bad. There's just been like a lot of like getting through things, and I feel just like more aware of everything, more aware of like how direct my actions are to like cause and effect, I guess. So I guess I'm more like critical on myself and my actions, which I find as more of a positive thing. So yeah, I feel like in the last year it's been a lot of growth, just a lot of growth, honestly.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're still kind of getting to know like who this new version of you is, or do you feel pretty like certain of like, okay, this is the new me?
I'm pretty certain in who I am right now. It it feels very it doesn't feel foreign. Uh, so I think taking that in consideration, I think at least who I am right now is I guess it's very true to myself. And I think because of that, everything around me has been moving so fluidly and so organically, and nothing has felt forced. Taking all that in consideration and how I feel, I feel like I'm finally coming to who I am. However, I feel like I'm always a student, so there's always room for more education, more growth, and all that stuff. But I'm very confident in the fact that how I'll take in that information from now on is completely different to how I would have before.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. What would you say is important to you right now? Like, what are your values? Like, how would you describe that?
I mean, right now, the most important thing to me is how I use my time, especially going through the periods of self doubt. It also made me think of like how I'd repurpose my life and repurpose my time.
Hmm.
And they were pretty scary thoughts, honestly. It's
Yeah.
just like yesterday, I watched this short documentary on this one skateboarder. I forgot his name. It was like an old Vice doc, and they were talking about the dynamic of him as opposed to other skaters. And he, as opposed to other skaters, used to have day jobs like being a cook or like working in restaurants and service jobs and whatnot. So he skated differently because he knew that he never wanted to go back. He knew what he had to go back to if skating didn't work out. I think I have that same dynamic when it comes to what I do, because before I went on full-time freelance, any odd job you could ever think of, I've had it. I've been working since I was 13. So whether it's a janitor, service worker, cook, dishwasher, car wash, like anything you would think of, valet boy, I've like everything. I know what I have to go back to if this doesn't work out. And I value my time so much more now. And so when it comes to that and looking at the future, I only want to purpose my time with things that not only create the life that I want, but also create like the environment that I want. Like I'm at a point where I want the things that I create to be bigger than me, to create community, to allow for it to strive and all that. So I'm more conscious of my position in this whole life universe thing, and more conscious of using it for a greater good.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have pretty good control over your thoughts?
Sometimes. Definitely, there are times where I'm just like, brain, why are you doing this? And mental health is something that I struggled with a lot throughout like just my life in general. Like I used to suffer from like anxiety attacks and just like mental breakdowns pretty consistently. And I went through therapy a lot, and they always tried to medicate me, but I just like would take the prescriptions but not actually like take them. I would just like appease them by like taking the actual prescription out, but just like dump it down the toilet, because I just like don't believe in medication for that purpose. Get vaccinated though. Yeah, it's always been a struggle for sure. And I think being more conscious of everything has allowed for me to mitigate like how much my thoughts don't consume me, but I'm only human. So sometimes it definitely does get really difficult for sure. So I don't think I have like full control, but I think I can grab the wheel when things get out of control.
Yeah. What do you feel has contributed to you having a bit more of like a grasp on your mental health, or has like helped you with your wellness?
I don't let myself get too isolated. Like I said, I have like a base community of people that I can rely on, and that helps a lot. I have a lot of just interest that I dedicate myself to, and it brings a lot of like worth to my life, at least like self-worth. So I think when my brain goes that way, I have like a lot of things to gravitate to that kind of eradicate those thoughts. So while they still come up, I just have like, it's almost like having like an immune system full of like defenses against the virus. It's like I can still get it, but I have all these defenses against it.
Yeah. I love that. Cheers to growth and to like just getting to know ourselves better, like when you just, and it really does come with time and like getting older and just experiencing different experiences of like just getting to know what works for you and what doesn't. And I think community, you've brought it up a lot in this conversation, and I love that you have that and that you've invested in that, because in order to really have community, like you have to like invest in it. Last year, we really realized how important community is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm really grateful that I got to know and appreciate that relatively early on. When I was a lot younger, when I was in high school, I had my group of friends, but they were like never like really doing much. And I remember my mother used to say, like, if you tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are. And I never really like critically thought of that, but until I like looked around me, and I was like, shit, if you look around me, I guess I'm not doing anything. And that like sparked the spark of like finding my community, finding the people that I want to be around that are doing the things that I enjoy and things of that nature. So early on, that just became such an important thing for me to direct my attention towards.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm forever grateful for it. I'm a huge advocate for finding, your circle, whatever it is, whether it is, some people function the best alone. It's like, I'm not saying everyone needs a group of 30 people to talk to, but
Yeah.
I think everyone needs to figure out to what extent they need community. Some people only need a dog. Some people only need 37 people. Some people need 1 million followers. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah,
it's important figuring out what you need and how to create that for yourself.
for sure. For sure. And I love that your mom kind of implanted that early on for you, that like your exterior is like a mirror reflection of like your interior.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
didn't really I don't know, it didn't really hit me until I think as high school was coming to an end and I started like really thinking like, shit, what's going on now?
Yeah.
So yeah. And that if it wasn't for that, I mean, I don't know if it wasn't for that, but at least that is what helped me really just take that first jump into finding. And the craziest thing is that, yeah, I found myself through other people, because I feel like even if you end up in circles that you don't enjoy or people you don't enjoy or environments that you don't enjoy, it still teaches you a lot about yourself, because you know that that's like what you don't like. That's like why I try all foods. It's like, even if I don't like it, I feel like that's a positive outcome, because I know now that that's something that I won't like.
Yeah, yeah. That's something that like I always try to emphasize, is like the importance of allowing yourself to explore and experience new things and experience people in general, because you learn a lot about yourself. Like there's only so much that you can learn about yourself alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Some people are good at that. So for them.
Yeah. Well, this was a really great conversation. I feel like we got to like really get to know you like in the career world, but also just kind of like where you've been, throughout this past year. How would you, to kind of just bring this full circle, how would you describe this current season of your life?
Uh, this current season of my life, it feels like a spring time. If I was to correlate it to a season,
Yeah.
just like, just came off of a winter and like everything's blooming now. So it feels great. There's also a sense of like making this period sustainable and making it last and carry new momentum moving forward. Like
Mhm.
I'm learning a lot on like existing and being present and whatnot. That's like a big thing that I've been very critical of myself
Mhm.
for, because I feel like I've only enjoyed things in hindsight up to recently.
Mm.
So I'm trying to be present, but I'm also trying to make sure that this current season like lasts and it creates something bigger and better, not only for me but for everyone around me moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that. And I feel like that's, uh, I guess, a symptom or like an after effect of what we just went through. It's like being very present in the present moment and appreciating and cherishing like what it is that you have now, but also thinking about sustainability and longevity, like to make sure that what happened, regardless of what happens in the world, just doesn't happen again. Like just
Yeah,
this like certain determination to like to really build something that lasts.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have that really instilled in me right now.
Yeah, I can
And it
relate.
feels good. It feels like a really good fuel to the fire.
For sure.
So just keeping it going. That's my
Yeah.
biggest thing right now.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for this conversation and for being open to sharing your life experiences and stories and thoughts with us. Do you
Thank you.
feel like there's No pressure, but is there anything that you'd like to say or express that you maybe didn't get to?
Um, Probably, but I'm just like not that with my thoughts.
It's all good. It's all
but,
good.
but if yeah, I guess if anything, I would definitely just continue to reinforce the importance of community because at least for me, coming from the small town New Jersey and all that stuff so separate from the world that I exist in right now, that is the facilitator. That's what made at least the first domino in the whole equation of everything
Mm,
was finding my community and finding more community within it, you know. So if I was to leave with any note, it'd be that because I hope that resonates with someone.
yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Sebastian.
No,
I
thank you.
appreciate you.
I appreciate your time so much in this conversation. This was great.
Thank you.